Okay, so I'm going to talk about dana, generosity, and how I've benefited from that. And I could talk about how I've benefited from receiving the generosity of others, and I could also talk about how much I've benefited from giving, because I think that's really important to acknowledge that we benefit when we give just as much as it's important to acknowledge when we receive as well. So I'm going to talk about dana in two main ways that I've experienced it here at the Buddhist Centre, because generosity is something that we can all do wherever we are. But here at the Buddhist Centre, the two main ways I've really appreciated dana has been through and via the dana economy that we have here, and also through friendship. And I've been reflecting on these two things and realising that there is a link between these and trust for me, trust of other people, and also trust that we are interconnected and that interconnection is true. So we have this dana economy where we're able to come to classes here without giving anything financially if we're unable to, and we can if we can. And I probably wouldn't have come to the centre when I did if it wasn't for that dana economy, because I didn't have very much money. I was just kind of getting set up after university with work. And I didn't quite believe it. I thought, it can't really be free. So I waited until I had a little bit of money. And then I came, and then it really was apparent that it was true that you are able to come here if you're not able to give financially. And I think quite a lot of us here in this room are probably in the same position when we first came, or maybe we're in that position now where we're unable to give financially. And I think I'm constantly appreciative that we have that way of functioning here at the centre, so that no matter what people's financial situation is, whether you're living day to day or week to week, you're able to come and benefit from being a part of the Sangha, hearing the Dharma, understanding how to practice it. And partly this is thanks to those who are able to give, people who do give regular contributions. And many of those people who may be able to give regularly might have been people who weren't at the beginning, or our circumstances might change and what we can give financially varies. But I just think it's so fantastic that we can come together as a Sangha and appreciate living a Dharma life with each other regardless of our financial situation. And I think this took a lot of vision and courage from those who have established the Dharma economy here in Sheffield, and a lot of trust that people will give when they're able to, and that people will give financially when they're able to, but that people can give in other ways. And through that dana, that generosity, a Sangha will be built, and here we are, part of that Sangha that has been built. I've heard about Glasgow Buddhist Centre recently turning from being a centre where you have to pay to go to classes to becoming a Dharma economy, and the woman that I was hearing speak about that was saying that they realised that what they'd set up was basically a group where the regular members of the group were asking the newcomers to pay for their centre, and they realised, well, that doesn't seem to work. Like, we want to be practising together, so why don't we become the people who can regularly contribute to that financially, so that we can welcome newcomers in no matter what their situation. And why would a newcomer feel like they want to give financially to something they've not even found out about yet? So I was really struck by that, and really do appreciate how much I've benefited from being able to come to a centre as a newcomer, not knowing anything about Buddhism, not really knowing if I was going to become a Buddhist or not, and to be able to be a part of a Sangha that is based on this principle of generosity. And yes, as I've said, people give in many ways, and there was a trust that people will want to give, and we see that all the time here at the centre. And I think that's partly what builds the warmth and the friendliness and the trust that we have between each other here in our Sangha. We're connected in ways that go beyond just financial, reciprocal relationships. And we're all given opportunities to give to this Sangha. You know, we can volunteer at classes, at the intro courses. We can be involved in the running of the centre, keeping it clean, gardening. There's the cafe we can volunteer in. We can help and set up a Sangha retreat. There's Sangha works days. And I've really benefited from being involved in those situations as well, and being somewhere where people are quite clear and quite welcoming to say, you can come and you can be a part of this together with us, and you can give. And again, the relationships that I've built through being involved in a community that's that kind of, there's a shared vision there that we can take part in. I've benefited from that kind of open shared vision. So we can be hands-on and involved, and we're not just receiving something that somebody else is just passing on. We're living together in this dana economy where we're able to give in many, many ways. And then moving on from there, I'll talk about friendship and how I've benefited from friendship. And I see that as a part of dana, a part of generosity, because people have given me their time and their energy and their support through the years, and I've developed close connections with people as a part of that generosity that they've offered to me, and I've really benefited from that, practical and emotional support. And you can see the True Ratna Buddhist community as a bit of a constellation of friendships in a way, like there's a constellation of stars. All the Sangha is connections between people, and in order to create those connections, we have to give of ourselves to each other. We need to give our time and our energy, and I've really benefited from people giving me that time and energy from themselves. Some Indian order members came here once, and a woman said she was going through some really difficult time in her life, and the order members that she knew just listened and listened and listened. And I remember being quite struck by that, and that was how she'd got through, and that difficult time in her life, that's how she found out how to practice through that difficulty, through the help and support of her friends in the order, and there she was ordained herself. So yeah, this friendship, this gift of friendship that we can offer each other, that can help us to change and to grow and to transform in the light of the Dharma. If we can share the Dharma with each other through friendship, then that's how we can realise the potential that we're all able to realise. And this gift of friendship has allowed me to, again, there's this connection with trust. It's allowed me to trust other people, to talk openly, to share of myself, to be honest about my situation. If I can be honest about things, then I can really change whatever it is that I need to change. And I've had to trust that other people want to give me that time and support as well, and I think that can be quite scary. We can feel a bit like, oh no, I just better keep myself to myself, actually. So needing to trust that other people are there to offer their time and their energy, and they will want to give that, and it's not something that I'm just kind of taking from them. So again, this aspect of generosity where we have to trust that people do want to give, and people do. And that can be mutually beneficial, the friendships that can form. So yeah, I've had to try not to be so self-contained, not so self-sufficient. Is that 8? Thank you. Timer by my good friend down the way. Yeah, because I can think of myself as quite self-contained, self-sufficient, but it's been really important for me to open up. And that might be, it would have been in discussion groups at Sangha night or over a cup of tea in the tea room, being open with each other, being appreciative that people are giving me their attention, giving me their time and their energy. That might continue into mitra groups. If we want to become a mitra, we may have that experience in our mitra group. But it could just be over a baked potato, where we start to open up and give each other our time and our energy and form these friendships. And so yeah, that's specifically when I was thinking about generosity, when I was thinking about this Sangha, that's really what came through, is how much people have offered me their time and their support. And yeah, we can all offer this to each other. We can give each other our full attention. We can listen to each other. We can talk openly with each other. And this really is a gift of generosity. It's a gift of friendship that we can offer to each other. And it is one that I've really benefited from. So yeah, I was thinking I wouldn't be standing here today if it wasn't for these two aspects of generosity that I've experienced in this Sangha, the dana economy, being able to come here regardless of my financial situation, being able to get involved in such a interconnected Sangha in a way where I'm not just coming for a class and then going home again. It's like there's a way in which I can bring myself in and experience Sangha at its best. And so dana has been this kind of active force in my life, if you like, through coming here, through the Dharna economy, and then through friendship as well. And the interrelationship that this Dharna has with trust and with the truth of interconnectedness is something that I'm very, very grateful for. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about the second of the Sangha Vastu's kindly speech and the effect that it's had on me. So in 1984, Sangha gave a talk to what was the Western Buddhist order, now the Triratna Buddhist order, which has been made into this book, The 10 Pillars of Buddhism. And there's a section on kindly speech in there, and there's an image that Sangha uses, which I really like, and I want to kind of use as the image to accompany us on this talk. And Sangha, he compares kindly speech to the warm rays of the rising sun that cause leaves to expand and flowers to open. So in the same way, if you're on the receiving end of kindly speech, it's like you're being nourished by the warm rays of kindness, and it can cause you to expand and to open and to grow. And that's certainly been my experience of receiving kindly speech from particularly friends with, and lots of people within this Sangha. And Sangha also says, well, kindly speech can perfume and invigorate. It creates an atmosphere. And when people come on the introductory courses, the courses that we run, so often people comment on the friendliness. It's the atmosphere, it's the friendliness, and that's often perfumed that through the speech, the way people communicate and welcome and speak very kindly to each other. So I want to explore kindly speech and the effect it's had on me, but before that I just want to contrast it with some harsh speech, experience of harsh speech, which is the opposite of kindly speech. And basically that has been my experience of communication. So I was thinking initially of in the playground at school, my kind of early school, and how brutal children are, really, kind of how harsh children are with each other. So, I mean, I received a lot of harsh speech at school, and I dished out a lot of harsh speech at school as well. And it just has the opposite effect of that sun. It makes you frightened and want to close off and be shut off. And there's this thing that children do, which is just to really find your weakness and then kind of shine a light on it and rejoice in that, really. It's the opposite of kindly speech. And then at university with friends, and at home as well, there was a more light-hearted banter, but with the kind of same drive behind it, which is just to not let people get too above their station, or to kind of, just to lightly point out your weaknesses. So just being in that environment my whole life, I suppose as well, this isn't a talk about Catholicism, but I was a Catholic, and combined with a kind of a guilt, an irrational guilt that I had from Catholicism, I just had a really bad image of myself, quite a low self-esteem, negative image of myself. So I arrived at the Buddhist Centre many years ago now, but using Sangha analogy of plant, maybe like a withered plant with my roots a bit malnourished and my leaves a bit yellow and kind of just a bit shriveled and the petals closed up. But what happened is I received lots of kindly speech. This atmosphere of kindly speech really nourished me. And in particular, my good friend Amoghavangsa over there, I often like to rejoice in Amoghavangsa. But it felt when I used to go, and I'd regularly go and meet Amoghavangsa, and I'd arrive feeling kind of self-conscious and anxious, and I'd just leave feeling brilliant, really happy, really uplifted, really confident. And it was just continuous kindly speech, encouragement, praise. And in particular, Amoghavangsa had a phrase he would say to me, which is, "You're a good man." And initially, because of my experience of communication, I found it difficult to hear praise and encouragement, so I would kind of pretend he hadn't said it and kind of look away and just try not to take it in. But I remember one time, and each time I met him, Amoghavangsa would say, "You're a good man." And I remember one time he just grabbing me by both arms so I couldn't move away and beaming at me and saying, "You're a good man." And after some time, it just started to have an effect. I suppose that I started to be able to receive the warmth of that kindly speech, and just to believe it, actually, just to say, "Oh yeah, I'm a good man. I am a good man." So I've got, thanks to kindly speech, particularly from Amoghavanksa, but lots of other people, a much better opinion of myself now. Just that it's allowed me to grow and expand and to open up. So lots of praise. Kindly speech involves lots of praise, and I've got lots of good friends, and particularly Amoghavanksa, who gives me lots of encouragement and praise. So if you point out somebody's good qualities, it makes them stronger. It makes them more aware of that quality, and it also helps to draw it out. It draws that quality out. It strengthens it. So we have this practice of rejoicing in merits, which is really important in our Sangha. So hopefully what I can evoke through this talk as well is how kindly speech creates this Sangha and really helps to build this Sangha. So if you've ever been at a Mitra ceremony, we had one a few weeks ago, we have a really concentrated spell, like an hour, 45 minutes of rejoicing in merits, and it creates a really uplifting atmosphere. You can't help but be uplifted by that. It's just that warmth of that kindly speech. And people fed back to me afterwards that it was among the nicest things people had ever said about them. And it's such a shame that it's a cliche, but we only ever say nice things about people at their funerals, don't we? And they never get to hear it. So, kindly speech is just a real gift, actually. It's another example of dana, but it's an expression of loving kindness and really rejoicing in that person's merit so they can really see them and believe them, and they become stronger, they grow. So if you rejoice in merits, it deepens friendships. It helps the other person to open and to see their positive qualities. Okay, good. I just saw that the feather moving, and I thought, oh no, I need to hurry up. And so, particularly within the Sangha, we have little mini networks within the Sangha, and I'm really fortunate to work in the centre team with my colleagues on the centre team. There's a real flavour and atmosphere, a flow of rejoicing. We're very often just rejoicing in each other's qualities. And Satyajyoti is particularly good at this. She's always telling me how much she appreciates working with me, which is really nice. And she'll tell me my qualities and what I bring to the team, why she enjoys working with me. Just imagine working in an atmosphere like that and a situation like that. It's great. And I turned 40 recently, if you can believe that. And I came into. We had a centre team meeting that day, and I came in feeling a little bit low, actually, a little bit down at turning 40. And I opened the door, and they just popped these party poppers at me, and then I sat down, and they rejoiced in my merits. Each of my colleagues just went round in turn and just told me what my good qualities were, and it was brilliant. It was so good, just like being bathed in these four suns, these kind of sun, the rays of these four warm suns. I'd also like to recommend Suyamati to spend time with Suyamati, because her name means something like the mind like a sun, and she's always been like this, particularly since she stopped being chair. So if you spend time with Suyamati, you feel like you're in the presence of the sun. You come away, and she'll point out your good qualities, and it feels like you've been bathed in this kindly speech. Okay, so maybe one last area around kindly speech is it partly involves truthful speech, but I want to include it in kindly speech. I really appreciate when people kindly just tell me things I haven't seen, blind spots about myself. And in order to do this, you need to, as a phrase that Amoghavanksa uses, you need to have made a lot of deposits of really praise and encouragement, and then sometimes you can make a withdrawal, and it doesn't feel difficult to hear. And so I've got a lot of friends who are just very skilled at telling me things I need to hear, just in a really kind way, and I really appreciate that. I wanted to mention Moksatara, who just very subtly and just clearly would keep telling me it'd be good to have shorter talks, because I kept speaking for over an hour and not trying to, and then now I've got my talks down to 45 minutes, and that was thanks to Moksatara. So just to round up, hopefully you've got a flavour of kindly speech, and hopefully you experience it, because hopefully it will characterise our interactions with each other and our community that we're trying to build. But yeah, it's really been my experience that receiving kindly speech has had a real effect on me, a positive effect on me. And in a sense, what we're trying to do with Sangha is create the conditions, the environment where people will grow and develop and realise their potential. And that atmosphere of kindly speech is essential, it's vital to just help people to feel, to feel at their best, to feel confident, to uplift people. So kindly speech is vital. Yeah, it's vital. I'll end there.
Okay, so I'm going to speak about beneficial activity. And beneficial, you can be at the receiving end of beneficial activity from the hands of many people, and even people that you don't know or come across. If I think about the story of my involvement in Triratna, I can see myself as benefiting from the activity, the efforts of many people who some I've known, but some I might never know. And my own experience of benefiting from Triratna are those moments when the collective effort of many, many people suddenly crystallizes in a symbolic moment or an image or something inspiring. Even though my first example of it might not actually sound so inspiring. It was inspiring to me because of the whole context. So this was going back 30 years to a very early stage in my involvement. I'd begun going to the Croydon Buddhist Centre, which at that time was starting up the first really successful right livelihood. And I remember there was downstairs was the shrine room, and upstairs was the restaurant. And I sat, and we'd had this wonderful, inspiring puja, carried away, and then puja came to an end, and it was time to kind of clear up, and they somebody whisked off the shrine cloth, and I saw that the shrine was actually a crate of bean tins. Now, that was actually a turning point. And it could have sent someone out, But the thing was that what the message is that you can turn a crate of bean tins into a sevenfold puja. Because that was what was going on upstairs. And that got me. It's that, well, whoever you are, I mean, you might if you are a crate of bean tins, you can actually, just throw a shrine cloth, over you, and you're a puja. and so my second example was quite a few years later. I'd become a mitra. It was the first time I did 2 Karuna appeals. My first Karuna appeal, and it was the Karuna appeal that I was very nearly. It involves knocking on doors and asking people for money for the benefit of activities in India, and that was really difficult to do. And I was so frightened they very nearly sent me home. But I remember one of the things, just one of those incidents which made it possible for me to do it, was I was arrived at the station, was met by Taradas, who was leading that Karuna appeal, and I had this suitcase for living for 2 months in this community that was going to support the appeal. And what Taradasa did was he picked up the suitcase and he put it on his head and carried it like that. And he said he did that because he saw people doing that in India. Now, what that immediately brought to mind was listening to Sangharakshita's talks, because at that time, you listened to Sangharakshita's cassettes, and you started cassette 1, then 2, 3, 4, 5. I got up to about 70 or so, and I listened to the talk in the Bodhisattva Ideal, where Sangharakshita talks about that example of the Japanese monk who there's this nun who has to catch a train. And to help her, he puts the suitcase on his head and runs so she can catch the train. And what that meant was the world of Sangharakshita's talks that I've been listening to, suddenly it was here on this street in London. And that gave me something that was able to carry me into the Karuna appeal, because they said, one of the things they told us is that you can, when you're knocking on the doors, you can be anyone. And so I decided, well, all right, well, I'll do it as though I was Dr. Ambedkar, because I'm allowed to be anyone. And I just thought how much courage he would have, and I just knocked after door after door after door, and I got through the appeal. This world of inspiration sort of coming into your life then took another stage a few years later when I joined a right life business called Windhorse Trading, which supplied the evolution shops. It doesn't exist now, but when it did, it was you could say a very big crate of bean tins with a shrine cloth thrown over it. It was one of the. I worked in the warehouse. It was one of the few warehouses where you could circumambulate a stupa with your picking trolley. And the particular, we used to have something we used to call the tantric period, which was actually the build-up towards Christmas, supplying all the evolution shops. And you had to work, double, that. And I remember a ceremony that we had one day, which was, we sat round in a circle, everyone was going to be working in the warehouse, and we had a vajra, a symbolic implement, and we passed it round, and each person placed it against their chest for a moment, and then passed it to the next person, and then they held it, then passed it to the next, and it went round the circle. And that was, I remember that moment because it was as though we were in a circle and we were all in it together. Which again gave you, the courage and the energy to sustain what we'd have to do. And also the thing about it was that each person held the vajra individually, but they then handed it on to the next person. So that the vajra, the inspiration, was coming from someone else. You had it for a moment, then you passed it on to somebody else. And when Sangharakshita, is talking about beneficial activity, one of the things he compared it to was the story of the inexhaustible lamps. That if you light, you can light your lamp from another lamp, and then you light others, who then light others. And from that tin of beans, to here, it's like lights being handed left, right, and centre.
Okay, so the 4 Sangraha Vastus. Samatata. These are not easy words for my first talk. So I'm going to talk about exemplification. First of all, I'll talk a little bit about how I benefit from it, and a little bit about receptivity to it, how we need to be receptive to exemplification. And I'll give a few personal examples of when I've benefited myself, and finish with a little bit about how exemplification gathers Sangha. So first of all, what do I mean by exemplification? Well, I mean seeing people embodying the Dharma and living out the Buddhist teachings. So acting skillfully, seeing people treating each other with kindness and love and generosity, and seeing others living with wisdom, so being more regarding in their actions of the well-being of other people, and also seeing other people expressing devotion and reverence for the three jewels. So that's what I mean by exemplification. And how do I benefit from seeing these things put into action? How do I benefit myself? Well, it benefits my own practice because it makes me want to emulate what I see. It makes me want to be more like the people that I admire. And also I see my own potential to develop in a positive direction, and I trust that wiser friends are going to help me to do that. I think it also gives me confidence in the integrity of the order because I see people actually embodying what they teach. So I'll talk a little bit about receptivity because I think this is really important in terms of exemplification. I think here in the Sangha, especially here in Sheffield, we've got a continuous stream of exemplification. It's happening all the time. There's such a lot of it going on. But I can only see it and I can only benefit from it if I'm actually receptive to it. So it's not really about putting people on a pedestal, but I do need to allow myself to be inspired by other people. So I think my strongest experiences of exemplification are when I'm receptive myself. So certain conditions help with that. So being on retreat, or especially after collective practice here at the centre, maybe puja and study, and especially after meditation. So I think it's a two-way thing. I think part of it is my own responsibility to be receptive, to remain positive and open and receptive to exemplification when it happens. So it's not a passive receiving of something being given. It's not a passive state. So I'll talk about a few personal examples of when I've benefited from exemplification. And they're not big gestures, they're not big things, they're quite simple things. But they've had a big impact on me because I've been receptive to it. So recently I travelled to the Adhisthana Retreat Centre to the public ordination ceremony of Abhaya Mala. And on the minibus I was witness to a conversation between two women order members where one order member was just asking another to help out on one of the festival days. So no big deal really. But this exchange just seemed really remarkable to me, and it was so skillfully and carefully done. It was like watching a dance really. It was an exemplification of kindness and care. The two women, they had a loving awareness and appreciation of each other, and joy and lightness in their connection. And this had a really strong effect on me. I felt gratitude, and I just felt utterly blessed to be surrounded by these wise and kind women who just genuinely want the best for people. And another occasion that's always stayed with me from a few years ago when I was quite new to the Sangha. I'd had a conversation with Surimati about something really precious to me in my practice. And subsequently, I just thanked her. We were coming out of meditation on Sangha night, and I just thanked her for the conversation. And she looked at me and she just said, "You're welcome, Paula, anytime." So again, just a simple thing. But I felt like I'd been hit by a massive ball of metta. It just had a really immediate and powerful effect on me. And I was quite new here, and I thought, oh, these Buddhists have got magic powers. What's going on? But you know, when I reflect on that, I'd strongly responded to exemplification of skillful communication and generosity. So the communication was open and clear, and it was given with full attention and full awareness, and it was given with real metta and real well-wishing, and it was something that I could trust. So it had a very positive effect on me, and it still does in my own practice of communication and friendship. Another context for exemplification is my Mitra group, which is Jenny, Jordana and Debs, and our teacher Sangha Gita. So we study the Dharma together, and we share our practice and we share our lives. And we've learned to really love and support each other over the years, and we exemplify things for each other. So we exemplify mainly the commitment of friendship and all that that entails, and sometimes its difficulties. And we exemplify courage because we practice with all our real life difficulties. And we exemplify kindness to each other and to ourselves when all that seems too difficult to do. I've also benefited from seeing Dharma practice integrated into family life. So I'm a parent of 4 children, and I went a few years ago on a family Sangha weekend retreat. And Sangha Gita was there, who's my Mitra teacher. I greatly admire Sangha Gita's wisdom and depth of practice and commitment to the Dharma. And that weekend she was caring for her baby granddaughter. So at bedtime she was cradling and rocking her baby granddaughter to sleep, just with an ordinary tenderness. But I was really struck by that image. It had a really big impact on me. And I think she exemplified integration for me, really. And I saw that this great commitment that she has to practice was expressed within an ordinary family life. So I was encouraged and inspired to bring my practice together with my own family life. So I'll finish by saying a little bit about how exemplification gathers Sangha. I think we're naturally drawn towards skillful action in a positive and active way because it's appealing and it's attractive to us. It just feels good, and we want to be around it and we want to be part of it. And I think we see the beauty in it, and we see it touches something deep within us that we know it's true, and we love it. And it deepens friendships based on trust and love and commitment. So just to finish, I think we're part of a really wonderful Sangha here in Sheffield. I think it's really remarkable. And exemplification like this, it builds our Sangha and it gathers our Sangha together. And I think because it helps us develop our individual practice, it also benefits others beyond the Sangha, because we all practice in our ordinary lives out there in the world.
Great talks. Am I on? Yeah. You put me on, yeah. Thanks very much for a really great talk. So let's do as we usually do and split up into some smaller groups for discussion. So if those people who've fairly recently finished an intermediate course, if you'd like to go with Moksatara and Bodhinaga in the green room. And tonight, slightly unusually, we're going to have a special group for under 35s, for young people. That's because this Saturday, starting at 6, there's an event for part of the sort of young, what's it called, young person? Sub-35s it's called. Okay, well that's very specific. There's a sub-35 event on Saturday, starting at 6 o'clock. So this will be an opportunity to sort of lead into that. So if you are under 35, you might well wish to go in the sub-35s group, which is going to be in the Red Shrine Room, which is opposite the green room. So it's the front of the building on the left. Because that doesn't leave us any rooms, we're not going to have a mixed group tonight. So if the remaining guys would like to meet initially in the bookshop, and we'll sort something out from there, and if the remaining women would like to stay up here, and some groups will be sorted out up here. And you might want to talk about, well, which of those Samgriha Vastus sort of really appeals to you, which has had an effect on you, which you think which has been important to you. But before we do that, let's give our 4 speakers a round of applause.